Welcome to Mac and Bleu, the cutting-edge podcast for the nation's builders, merging the realms of construction with exciting advancements in technology. Join us on a thrilling journey where we delve into the dynamic world of blockchain, AI, the metaverse, virtual and augmented reality, and their transformative impact on the industry. Our engaging discussions span a wide spectrum, covering not only construction, economic development, supply chain, and market segments, but also exploring the vibrant tapestry of diversity within the construction landscape. We shed light on the intersection of local politics and its profound influence on the construction sector, while championing the remarkable contributions of women and minorities in construction. For all things Mac and Bleu, head to www.macandbleu.com, and don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. I'm your host, JJ Levinsky. Now let's get into it. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Mac and Bleu. I'm your host, JJ Levinsky, president and co-founder of Blue Wave. And today I'm lucky enough to have another cheesehead. Hopefully he's a Packer fan. He grew up close enough to Madison. He better be a Badger fan or I'm going to kill him. And I want to say Chris Tatge, but it's Chris Tatge. I can't even pronounce it properly, but he can ostracize me later. But thanks, Chris, for coming on today.
Thanks for having me on, JJ. I appreciate it.
Little background. I'll read a little bit of his bio, and then we'll get into the fun like we always do. But Chris is the founder and president of DC Materials, also Dynamic Construction, which is a Wisconsin-based company specializing in providing comprehensive turnkey framing solutions and lumber for multifamily and commercial construction projects. He's got over 25 years of experience. We'll qualify that later to make sure it's legitimate. And then not only that, but he's also, I think, the current or past president of the National Framers Council. Is that correct?
As president, I'm now we just elected a new president, so I'm the past president.
Well, you're the past president.
But they'll take all the free labor they can get. So.
I was just say, did they demote you to treasurer now or not?
I got segued into I'm the framer representative on the board of directors for the Structural Building Components Association. So the association that sort of governs wood roof trusses, floor trusses, and wall panels for North America. So I get to be the framer that tells them what framers want.
Now, for all you Illinois fans out there, he's close enough to the border that I shouldn't call him a fibber, but you know, us Wisconsin people, we have a little animosity towards my Illinois friends. So he's south and up, he's almost in the suburb of Madison, but he's on the south side. So we got to be careful about what he spews out in his podcast today. So that's my little dig on my southern neighbors.
I let that phrase slip about 25 years ago on a date with a girl from Chicago.
And you're married now?
No.
I was going to say, if you won her over with that slang, you were in the good company. Hey, Chris, everyone wants to know, before we get into the success story and all that kind of stuff and the cool things you're working on, people always want to just hear the humble side of Chris and your background. We all have a background. Some of us are dumber than others and some of us were more fortunate than others. If you don't mind, just, take 10, 15 minutes and just kind of go through the School of Hard Knocks and kind of what got you into the business, and then I'll kind of poke at a little bit of that too. So just, a little bio without the whole heavy resume type thing.
Sure. I'm share my story quite often. Got out of high school, barely graduated, was not a good student. Didn't think I was really smart. Got a job as a framer, wearing a tool belt every day. I liked it. I liked getting a tan. I liked working outside. I liked the hard work, and I could grasp it and understand it. And it was clear that I was good at it, right? And it was the first thing that I was really good at.
Did you have shop class? Did they still have shop?
I did. I had shop class, and we built a little shed. Only thing I'd say about shop class, they didn't teach us what a speed square is, and that's a pretty essential tool for a framer.
Yeah, no kidding. Right after the pencil.
That's right. So I find framing and I like it, and I'm good at it. And so by the time I'm 20 years old, I'm self-employed. I've got a contract to frame 26 houses with a production builder over the course of the next year, and I've got 2 employees.
Now, were you just doing the framing, or did you set windows and do cladding too, or not?
Framing and windows and water barrier. That's it. Yep. had no business signing that contract, had no business being out on my own at that point. But, that's how most of us construction are.
We just say yes and figure it out on the back end, right?
That's right. Yep. So sort of early start with self-employment and small business ownership, and did okay. Struggled and learned the hard way, the way a lot of guys in our field learn. In 2013, I thought I had reached pinnacle of success. I had 15 employees. I'd signed contracts to frame labor-only apartment buildings that were 60,000 square feet. I'd pay everybody, and when the job was done, whatever was left, I got to keep. And wearing a tool belt every day, running guys, had a few different iterations of leadership positions between 20-year-old self-employed guy and that point, but really thought I had made it. Ended up needing a safety plan, and I got in contact with the National Framers Council, and at the time, their office was here in Madison, Wisconsin. Yeah. So I said, well, I'll drive a check up, and I drove a check up to their office. I mentioned the SBCA, Structural Building Component Association. It's a lot of letters, but they're tied in with the National Framers Council. These guys have been setting standards for how to install roof trusses since the 1990s. And I walked into the building, and it seemed like it was the first time a framer had actually talked to them about the standards they were setting.
Hey, Chris, let me interrupt you. So during that time, I want to jump ahead, but what my first inkling was when I hear those initials, was that anything modular at the time, or were you still stick framing at that time? Were you still getting bulk lumber in and still stick framing?
We were still stick framing. There was a little bit of wall panels coming into our market, but my niche was still stick framing. Being able to take a 150-page print and put all that information onto one layout on a wall plate.
Well, you might have floor or roof trusses, but as far as any true full offsite, manufacture. Okay, so keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. So a lot of interesting conversations. Joined the National Framers Council, and I ended up meeting these guys mostly in the Mid-Atlantic and Texas. Kenny Shiflett, George Hull, Scott Stevens. These guys were framers, but they were businessmen, and they had offices and they had staff, all kinds of stuff that I didn't know a framer could do. Well, the big difference was they were buying and selling all their own lumber. They were controlling the wood packages. And by controlling the wood package, they were helping control their schedule. They were being more successful that way. And with money they were making from that lumber sale, they were supporting their back office. They were supporting their field even more, and they were doing it better than I was here in the Midwest, right? And Wisconsin's two-step market, always has been, and that is to say, if you want a big building, 100,000 square foot building, the general contractor buys the framing labor separately, and then a local lumberyard will buy the wall components and the loose parts and pieces from a mill, distributor, whoever, bundle that in, and the GC brings all those parties together on the job site. I wanted to bring this new business model into Wisconsin where I controlled the components, I controlled the loose material, I controlled the labor, and I could speak to all of them. Getting into supply chain and breaking into supply chains is tough, especially when you're dealing with a commodity. People circle the wagons and don't like change because it's hard. It's hard to add value to a commodity, right? So people are very protective. It took me about 1.5 years or 2 years to convince the right people and build the right relationships. And in 2018, sold my first lumber package. Yeah, it worked. It was tough, but we worked through it, kind of got it figured out. And between 2019 and 2022, we grew 1,126%. We were named 500 39th fastest growing company in America by Inc. 5000 magazine. So I've very much, I spent 20 years wearing a tool belt every day, swinging a hammer, running crews. And so after that, it's been a really fast trajectory to going from being carpenter to medium-sized business owner to president of a real company. But it's been fun.
Hey, Chris, when we go back to that year and a half process with the supply chain or the commodities brokers, if you will, I think everyone would want to know how were you able to capitalize that, or did you let them act as your creditors almost in house? Because everyone's going to go, well, geez, Chris, how did you jump from labor only to that's a big nut to carry on terms?
Yeah, in framing, and it's more outside, more throughout the South. There's there are people who will supply lumber materials and a function that their value add. Part of that is the credit that they extend to framers. So in lumber, we talk board feet per thousand. So how much do you have to spend to buy 1,000 board feet of wood, right? Sometimes if you get a good buy, it's $400 for 1,000 board feet of spruce.
There comes a time when dreams become a reality, when you see your vision materialize into a true work of art. And the only way to get there is to choose a general contractor who shares that same vision and knows how to bring it to life. At Bleu, we aren't so big that we've forgotten where we've come from, and we aren't so small that we can't care for your projects regardless of their size. When your vision deserves safety, perfection, timeliness, and expertise in order to become a reality, trust Bleu to get it done right the first time.
Well, you can pay these guys $450 for 1,000 board feet and use their credit, right? So a lot of my vendors, it was getting paid when paid terms. A lot of it was vision casting for what I could do and asking above and beyond what they're used to for our market. My component manufacturer believed in my vision for the way I could change the way the buildings are delivered in Wisconsin. So yeah, they were willing to be flexible with payment terms initially to get this thing off the ground. But it was a conversation you had to have. I think getting used to having those kind of conversations that are awkward initially, being able to just do that without feeling weird about it gives you a big advantage if you're a contractor. It's that kind of stuff. People have to talk about that. So yeah, had to use a lot of other people's money to make things start working.
So go to once you finally broke through that, let's say like the year one after the year and a half or 2 years of getting this whole thing set up, what were the successes and the struggles in that? Okay, so you cross one hurdle, right? And now you're now sitting at this, oh my God, we've had this awesome growth. Now, as a business owner and as a self-described entrepreneur and someone that kind of went from, in the field to being CEO, quote unquote, what were those struggles on that, call it that sophomore to junior type transformation?
Yeah. Learning how to read financial statements. It's so important. Even still, I continue to learn the way you need to have your accounting organized in order to accomplish your goals. I mean, you decide you want to have a new initiative and add on to your facilities, and you need cash. The way I need to be able to communicate with my banker is a lot different than the way that than I was used to functioning as a contractor. So the whole accounting side of it, understanding how to, you talk about challenges. When you, a little bit supply chain, when you're, the thing about supply chain is that people are willing to sell you, and they'll say that, we don't sell contractors, right? I'm not a contractor. I'm a lumberyard, a materials provider, right? We have DC Materials. It's a standalone company. It's not a contractor. And they'll decide to sell you, right? But the truth is that they're willing to sell you material as long as you're not pissing anyone off their other customers off, right? When you grow that fast, you piss a lot of people off. People don't think about, you want to talk about being a disruptor, being disruptive, and bringing new ideas. And that's all great. But you got to remember, you're actually disrupting someone else. What's that reaction going to look like from them? And so my competitors have worked hard to sort of push me out of the market with the leverage that they have. So that's been a challenge. And I've had to make sure that my relationships are very solid, make sure that my vendors are on my team, and be able to continue to deliver to my customers. Organizational structure, it's easy for me and my business partner to bid a job, estimate a job, execute a contract, buy it out, all that stuff. How do I get somebody else to do all that stuff, right? Is that written down anywhere? Because a year ago it wasn't. It's all in my head. I just know what I'm doing. Well, how do I bring on a project manager who's going to be able to work into our organization properly? So creating workflow charts for all that kind of stuff. It's not easy to go from a small business to a big business. We very much skipped the medium part.
So, Chris, did you do that all on your own, or did you end up, like many of us, falling on the sword and then going and seeking help with like business forum groups, like a Vistage or EO or YPO or any of those that many know? And then furthermore, what was the first strategic hire you saw that made a big difference in your company? Answer both of them if you can.
I joined YPO 2 years ago, and it was a great decision. Anyone that doesn't know, it's Young Presidents Organization, sort of created for young people who don't know how to run big companies, or at least need insights. So I've got a peer group that I meet with once a month for 4 hours a month, and it's confidential and it's great. And I learned so much from those other business leaders. So that's been good. Sort of the strategic hiring side, we brought on a project manager who has really been an extension of what his name's Dan. Dan's great, and everyone who works with Dan is great. And Dan was expensive, and Dan was worth every penny. But he manages job sites, he manages subcontractors. He lives in both worlds. He can write an email and he can make an angry phone call, and that's and he knows which way to communicate to each individual. So those guys who can sort of bridge between the field and the office are worth their weight in gold. So bringing Dan on was a really big deal, and he got me out of the field and into the office, freed up my time to sort of big vision kind of stuff. The other thing is I brought on a second business partner. This guy had really established himself as the leader in managing carpentry labor. My business model, my go-to-market was very different than anything anyone had ever seen in Wisconsin. And so you're a framer who goes from asking for a contract for $300,000 to asking for a contract for $1.5 million or $2 million, more than that, right? And so this guy really brought the credibility that I needed to sell my new system, my new way of delivery.
Did you find him or did he find you, or like how did that relationship cultivate?
We had a really good collegial relationship. We were competitors, so labor-only apartment framing contractors. And, we'd have lunch every few months, talk with each other about how much work we had. And while we were bidding against each other, he was way better than I ever was. But we'd always talk and we'd always share work and help each other out. And the willingness to sort of be open and work, at least have a good relationship with that guy. I knew that he was the perfect fit for what my vision was.
How did you compliment him then?
I'm a relationship guy. I'm a talker. I'm a big vision guy. I'm sales. He's very much nuts and bolts and how are we going to execute, and doesn't mind digging in. And very much his sort of the way that he always sold jobs is he delivered, and he was extremely reliable, and at all costs he would deliver the project, meet customer expectations, and that's the way he sold. He'd never come into an office and smile at you and promise the world. He just consistently delivered. And so his ability to sort of do that and that system that he had worked really well with sort of my vision for growth, my ability to kind of promote what we were doing as a new thing. So yeah, I'm big ideas, and he actually gets it done. So.
Yeah, well, you hear about partnerships that are successful or organizations that grow when you add back to that strategic hire. In this case, you had two, if you want to consider it like that. But no, it's music to my ears because you love hearing the success stories, and it typically is somebody's the big vision, and then someone else usually is the execution, the X's and O's. It's almost like the visionary CEO and the who's going to get it done COO or president. I mean, not to overuse the titles, but that's how it is. Thanks for sharing that, Chris. Let me go down a couple other avenues here, because I want to go down the material side, then I want to go down the labor side, and then let's come back and kind of talk about the current status of DC, and then kind of the market in general. So as you were going through this hyper growth, one of the big issues has always been labor. Like, how do we attract, retain labor in a trade deficient society? The mentality. I mean, luckily I'm a Midwest guy. When I moved out to Arizona 12 years ago, we have the struggle here. There's a struggle everywhere in the country, right? It doesn't matter. But you're seeing a huge, when the market's hot, it's amazing how much capital gets deployed back into the trade schools, the mentality, the psyche of it within society, even at the parent stage, if you want to call it that, of looking at the debt structure of a four-year college versus a plumber or HVAC, or in your case, a framer coming out and making, damn good money, sometimes six figures without really having a whole lot of experience. I mean, it's crazy, some of the wages and salaries right now. But anyway, back to your hyper growth. How are you able to target young people, old people, whatever, to come into the world of framing? Because I think people would be interested to hear that story.
We so most framers are really good at framing and not really good at business. I wasn't good at business. I had to learn, right? And so you're in a situation where it's these projects are worth tens of millions of dollars, and you need really talented, really fast, really high quality framers who can't get bonded, who don't have $10 million insurance policies, who aren't great at business, right? And so we partner with other smaller framing contractors, that is guys who have anywhere from 5 to 60 employees. We use a sub-tier structure. So yeah, on the East Coast, you would call me the professional framing contractor and these guys the sub-tier. We set them up for success. So I break the building up into different parts and pieces. I'll contract all the stairs with one guy. I'll contract all the decks with another guy. I'll contract all the production, the walls, floors, and roof with another guy, and someone else will get the windows. So we break it up into manageable pieces so that we don't need a company with 100 guys. We don't have to have 100 employees. We work with the general contractor to get the insurance requirements met that our subcontractors need to meet. Do all the back end office work, and we do a few things. We pay our subcontractors weekly, so we add value on that credit side. And we, if there's a gray area, if there's an area of dispute with our subcontractors, we go into our pocket and we make it right. So if they say something was not in their scope, we'll have a discussion. Doesn't mean we never push back, but we're always fair, right? And in our part of the world, it's a lot of first generation Latino framers, and those guys are big on trust. You earn their trust, and they don't forget it. And so I'm very proud to say that if they're slow, we're the first ones they call. And just, it's a relationship thing for us. We act like we work for them, and we want them to be successful, and they are because of it.
Good answer there. What about I hear you on the cultural piece. We see that a lot, in the desert Southwest too. With the different ethnic groups or whatever. It's not just the Latinos. It's everything. You look at how different trades have gone almost to ethnic preferences. As far as it's funny how the old world trades almost migrate through generational type transformation in that regard. But okay, so Chris, back to the retention piece though. So talk to me about Southern Wisconsin, or even however many markets you work in. What's it like for the attraction and retention now of those people? I mean, it's one thing just to talk about what you did, but are you guys doing anything more organically than that, or are you getting in bed with trade schools or anything else, especially with your exposure on the Framing Council?
Yeah. We are not involved with any trade schools. Most of the learning or teaching that I'm doing is at a very high level, sort of talking to other framing contractors across the country about how to find success, or sort of encouraging other carpenters that they can do what I did. So on that side of things, not a lot. There is with these subs, I never work to kind of keep these guys under my thumb. There's a lot of these guys that I do business with who go out and bid other jobs for GCs who are willing to add their own management to get a cheaper price. So encourage those guys to find success outside of just doing business with us. But yeah.
Let me switch over to the material side. When you were talking about how you broke through, it wasn't, when you look at it, it wasn't that many years ago, 18, 19. So we're only talking 5-6 years that you've been doing this. And then if you look at the post 2020 type thing, when, lumber shot up during that unfortunate time period and ridiculousness. Okay, now you come to today's day and age where the mergers and acquisition, the M&A market is ridiculous. The big suppliers have only gotten bigger. So how are you able to maintain market share when you're competing with companies that have billions of dollars on their balance sheet to go, Chris, you guess what? We don't have to give you shit. We'll just squeeze you out.
You're right. You hit the nail on the head. If you talk to any old school lumber guy, one of the first things they'll tell you is lumber is a relationship business. When I met with one of the lumber distributors down here, the first thing he said was, I could buy $500,000 worth of wood with a phone call. But if I don't pay within 10 days, they'll never sell me again. And lumber guys take a lot of pride in that they're still very old school about it. So you need the relationships. And I'm never going to be able to buy a 2x4 as cheap as some of my competitors. and that's fine. But I can add value beyond what they can. I'm a framer, and I introduced myself as a framer and a carpenter. That's what I am. So when I open up a building print and I look at the orientation of the floor trusses, or if I look at the rim board details or the way they frame the corridor, I think about that plan the way a framer thinks about that plan. Assembly. How do I put this together well, right? What's the smoothest process going to be? And then I can, because I also understand lumber, I can speak to that piece. I can say, if you switch out this LSL rim board for OSB rim board, you'll save $40,000, right? So I understand the impact on the framer from doing that switch. So I can take from the best of both worlds and sell those packages in a way that my competitors often can't, just because they don't have 20 years of experience behind them putting this stuff together. They see LSL and they quote LSL. So that's how I sort of keep my edge. That's how I stay competitive. I don't ever sell on being the cheapest, although with a commodity, you do have to have the lowest price. I sell on the value add. I talk to developers. I talk to architects. I start looking at plans when they're 5 pages. And then by the time they're 180 pages, 9 months later, I've got an edge for that sale. So.
That makes sense. Yeah, that was well done. All right, let's go into like the new nirvana, which is, as far as the offsite construction trends and things like that. So, all right, give the audience a lay of the land of what's happened over the last 4 years as far as offsite. How did it start? What are the transformations? What are the trends? How have you been able to capitalize? What have been the struggles? I mean, I know we could spend an hour on this, but just start in there and let's just see where it unravels.
Yeah. So
there comes a time when dreams become a reality, when you see your vision materialize into a true work of art. And the only way to get there is to choose a general contractor who shares that same vision and knows how to bring it to life. At Bleu, we aren't so big that we've forgotten where we've come from. And we aren't so small that we can't care for your projects regardless of their size. When your vision deserves safety, perfection, timeliness, and expertise in order to become a reality, trust Bleu to get it done right the first time.
We're a wall panel market. Any apartment building that's built in southern Wisconsin is built with wall panels, floor trusses, and roof trusses. A lot of components. The sort of component industry will say that they're practical offsite solutions, and they are. So I think we'll hear people talk about the 2017 McKinsey report and how we need an innovative construction, and they're absolutely right. All this private equity comes into our industry, and they're going to be the solution. They're going to figure it out. And you're right. You could talk for an hour, but my Cliff Notes take on this is, there's a lot of good ideas. There's a lot of new ideas that are terrible. There's a lot of new ideas that might succeed. I want to say it the right way, but I've been building buildings for 25 years, and the way we build buildings, we find those means and methods sort of not with focus groups and all kinds of corporate stuff. We figured out a way to build the buildings we build in a way because we've gone through an absolute gauntlet to keep our businesses open. It's a proving grounds. I think when you sort of artificially pump a bunch of money into construction, you're so much more apt to fail because of the way that we need to sort of prove new systems.
Well, listen, we all saw it down here. I'm sure you know the name. I don't need to mention it, but, $3 billion capitalization by a certain PE group, and it failed, and it failed miserably. And, you know people there. I know people that were here in Phoenix that were involved in that. They had great ideas, but you can't just take that kind of capitalization and think you're going to turn the industry on overnight. Now, what came out of that? You and I could probably agree. You saw wood construction come back into mid-rise buildings that probably weren't going to happen because of the advancements of off-site construction. When you look at the other facilities that were making, like, the lambs, I call it the lambs, but the different, everything that has an acronym that revolves around laminated lumber, that's a success. So there were a bunch of micro victories that came out of that well capitalization. But back to your point, you saw a lot of failure was you can't turn the Titanic on a dime, and that's your industry.
What I feel like has been missing is these guys who have had to work and grind, and I'm framers, tradesmen. Maybe we're not the best at communicating. Maybe we're not the best at sending out emails, marking up PDFs, and doing all that stuff. But we've got a lot of experience. We really, to be a good framer, you have to know a lot about every other trade to do it properly. And so I think a little bit of that spirit needs to be involved when you're innovating and trying to do new things. Yeah, I don't see it as a 5-year process. I see it as a 20 and 30-year process. And if you look at what's the best example we've got of really changing the way we build things, I say it's wood roof trusses. In the 1950s and 1960s, these guys start building little roof trusses in their garages, right? Nobody had ever done that before. Here we are, 70 years later, 60 years later, and most of the country uses wood roof trusses. That's an actual success. That's an actual industry-wide change that's happened. So those same people are starting to build wall panels, right? They're starting to say, let's try doing this offsite. And let's see which, it happens a lot here in Wisconsin. Like I said, we're a panel market, but let's take that next step. And once we got everybody using wall panels, can we start incorporating things into those wall panels? Can we start looking at MEPs? I don't think we need to bite off the entire chunk in one move. Offsite's great, and so work with existing industry, work with the guys who are out there, and push and pull those guys forward, right? So sort of working with components has been a huge part of our success. The consistency that's lent to our process by always having our walls built a certain way, always having it delivered in a certain way, in a certain order. It's really helped my guys streamline their process on site. We deliver 4-story building in 8 weeks. So it's 1 week for walls, 1 week for the floor, so on and so up. 8 weeks to deliver a full building, no matter what the size is. We can scale our manpower up because behind them is a system that's consistent. We know what we're getting every single time. That consistency also helps mitigate the most expensive thing in construction, risk, right? Guys don't like doing new things. Risk is expensive. And so components wall panels have really helped us scale in a big way.
Chris, let me talk about, I don't know if you did, any research, but to qualify this before I get into it is, my old co-host was Robert Johnson, who's a aficionado in the cold form space, and there's a lot of followers to this podcast that, cold form steel is going to replace wood and all those kind of things. And I realize you represent kind of the old guard and the old school. I'm kind of a believer that I look at each project probably like you do is sometimes wood is better, sometimes cold form steel is better, all those kind of things. But I'll go one step further. I can't imagine a project now that doesn't have all three, where we have, red iron, we'll have cold form, and we have wood. It just seems like the marriage of the three, and back to what you said is, if you can go back to the artisan part of this and the craftsman part of this, there's solutions all over the place. I'll even throw masonry in there, where we were looking at a project about, 4 years ago? We came back on the design build promotion, and we said, hey guys, let's go here with masonry, let's go here with red steel, let's go here with cold form, and let's do this with wood. And they're like, why? And I'm like, because we're beating the market. I said, we can do this and beat this lead time. We can do this and beat this lead time. And I said, trust me, the cost will be negligible, but time and risk, if you quantify the time and the risk, it'll move the needle or the arbitrage much faster and further than if you're just looking at it in a single component. So it's I'm trying to create this dialogue around this, that when people watch this, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be, oh, I love wood and I hate steel. Oh, I love steel and I hate wood. No, there's synergies all over the place, right? So give me your take on that, on what you're seeing, because you work in a unique space where it's a lot of multifamily. Maybe I'm sure you do some commercial stuff too, but are you seeing more and more collaboration with different materials? And I don't mean like all the fancy stuff like 3D printing and things like that. I mean just the scenario that I described, where the marriage of, we can all play in harmony and play in the same sandbox if it's thought out properly.
Well, that's the thing. My take is your general contractor partner making sure that communication is streamlined? Are they, because they're really going to be the hub of this whole thing, this whole coordinating, right? So my good GC customers, I get a markup of all the details, and they do a great job of highlighting all the different parts and pieces of who has what part of their scope, right? And understanding workflow, scope review, all that. Are they communicating all that stuff well? Because you're right, taking all the different parts, pieces, the different trades, mixing them all in together the right way to find success on a project is really the best way to find the best efficiency for delivering affordability, delivering the best product. Now, if I've got steel beams running through my first floor to catch all kinds of stuff because it's the best way to do it, there's a general contractor who's just going to email me the shop drawings, and then there's a general contractor who's going to run conflict between the steel and my floor trusses. And I'll be doing the same thing, but if I don't have a GC who's not supporting me, it's going to fail. So what's it come down to? It's really, are we supporting those trade partners in the market who add value early, who want to do pre-construction planning, who have the resources, the time, and the will to come to the table and invest on that side? Or are you going with the $10,000 you'll save $10,000 will buy a lot of Tylenol philosophy and contracting with my competitors? So, that's what promote the guys who are willing to put the time in and then make those meetings happen. Right?
Well, that keyed up my you kind of just walked right into my next trap, which was the question of, I'm going to make a statement, then a question. It's kind of going to be a little bit both, but I'm just looking for the dialogue. Is you hit the nail on the head. Is I think we all know, and we can all realize that those of us that are tenured and been around, those capital stacks and those developers, and in our case, GCs that have the relationships and are allowed some sort of pre-construction time, I guarantee you those projects are always going to be more successful, and I know you agree. My question then turns it to you, Chris, with your success. Are you finding that it's not only GCs now, but are the developers and the capital stacks coming to you actually as a preferred subcontractor trade partner and almost teeing you up to the GCs? Like, are you having just as much influence as the GCs now because of your success?
I sort of walk this really fine line with developers are not the ones writing me a check, right?
Well, aren't they though? They technically are.
It flows that way. I've had a lot of success engaging developers early on and sharing my opinions and insights early in the design process. Absolutely. And you're right. There is much more of an awareness. These guys understand that the design, they need to be able to beat the market cost with their design to get their projects going, right? And if they get out the gate the right way, their projects are going to pencil way better than the other jobs that are out there. So, yeah, absolutely. I've seen developers have engaged me earlier. It's been interesting the last few years. General contractors have been more open with me about where things are at with their developers, where they need to be, the kind of stuff they're thinking and what they want. So yeah, absolutely. I've got a lot of jobs to pencil with the VE that I can bring to the table.
Yeah, I can imagine. So let me ask you another question. In the realm of, are you still just in southern Wisconsin, or you said that you've done stuff in other parts of the country? I guess my question is are you able to scale DC? And if so, are you actually now in kind of an acquisition mode where you're looking, or do you still just 1099 everyone, or do you actually, in certain markets for certain GCs, do you actually look at it as a W-2 opportunity? I'm just kind of curious about, hey, what's Chris's growth plan with your partner, and like what are you guys looking at down in your super excited corporate juggernaut type stuff?
We've really enjoyed being in a position in Madison, Wisconsin, to be sort of the first choice for a lot of projects, and we've been able to be picky on the jobs we chase, and the jobs we chase hard. We've been doing more work over in Milwaukee. And so we're growing in southern Wisconsin at the moment. Now, sort of the national reaching out thing, there's a few nationwide framing contractors out there. I wouldn't, we're used to delivering a certain level of customer service and a certain experience to our customers. I think often about how I could deliver that same experience remotely, further away, and I can see a path to it. I really think that geographically, I think the Midwest is an interesting part of the country for being a contractor, where it's very much relationship centric. It's, I know this guy and I trust him. I think the further you get from the Midwest, the more people tend to lean on paperwork and contracts to ensure that people are going to fulfill their obligations. And so it's a different mindset. It's not a place that I'm used to operating in. I continue to learn more and more about that, but I don't like the idea of going somewhere and doing something because my contract says I need to, or a general contractor reminded me of that. I do what I'm supposed to because I have integrity. I'm a good contractor. So, short answer is I would like to expand. I'm continuing to think about what the best way to do that is.
Well, at least you're humble and honest, and it's nice to hear that you're, without patronizing you, it's I think people would be like, yes, Chris, you're ready, and then but at the same token, you're not trying to build Rome in a day, right? Because like you said, back to the analogy we gave with our counterparts in town here when they had unlimited money, they made a lot of dumb mistakes, right?
It's a gauntlet, and it's supposed to be. You're supposed to go through that to. I mean, that's just how we work in construction. It's not supposed to be easy, and it lends itself to every efficiency that's available.
That was well stated. Well stated. Not bad for a Southern Wisconsin guy, gotta admit. Yeah, you probably drank a bunch of New Glarus this morning before the podcast, so you're good to go.
You know, we've got plenty of it down here.
Yeah, well, see, we can't get it, so maybe you should send some down. I laugh because every time I see someone from Wisconsin coming down or Minnesota, they're always bringing their favorite beer that they can't get down here. So
my brother-in-law in Finland requests it every time we fly back over there. So.
Hey, I was just looking at the clock. We still have some time left, but as a host, my job right now is to kind of shut up and go, Chris, what would you like? What haven't we talked about, or what message, or it's kind of your platform. What do you want to talk about kind of speak directly to the audience instead of me? What's your ask? Is there any action things you want out there? Any call? Just kind of, it's Chris's platform. You could be think of it like you're running for office right now.
Well, thanks.
Even though you're a past president, you can apply for the custodial engineer job at the Framers Council.
There's a few things that are close to my heart. I was a framer who didn't see beyond sort of what was just surrounding me, and there's a lot of success available to guys that are in the trades, and just I like being out there as a guy who I don't think there's anything special about me. I just do what I say I'm going to do, and I have ambition, and so. Guys in the trades, there's a lot of success to be had beyond just what you're doing. I think as an industry, if you're doing light wood construction, engaging framers early in the process, like I said, to be a good framer, you have to understand a lot of the other trades, every other trade that you affect. And so we have a unique perspective on how to construct these buildings. And I know that sometimes we can be rough. We don't communicate through the right means. But getting a framer to the table early is worth your time. And the other part is sort of using components as an offsite solution. It's worked really well for me. It's practical. It's a great half step for a great way to get into early design process. Those are the things that I sort of see as not the solution to affordable housing, but, important parts and pieces to me to be able to deliver better, higher quality places for people to live. So.
Hey, Chris, let me ask you a question on the back to the modular approach. If I can get put my hat on for a minute as because we have general contract and we have MEP services under one roof, which is kind of unique. If I look at think of acute healthcare right now, it's almost gone to completely modular, where you're getting almost like they'll crane up damn near a whole room, right? As far as a patient room, you're still building out like a surgical center, even a lot of that's coming modular. Do you think that your industry, as far as multifamily, are we closer to getting the MEPs built into those panels where we're swinging modular, almost, I don't want to say like everyone stereotypes the South Korean type pod or the Southeastern Asian pod, but let's be honest, I got a feeling that capital's gonna drive our industry or your industry towards maybe not as sophisticated as that, but do you see in the near future that come happening on the multifamily side?
I can see it. What causes innovation in construction? It's what people start losing. When people start losing market share, losing bids, they look to the people who are winning, right? And one of those people doing. And so we're in a spot here in the Midwest where people are very comfortable with open cavity wall panels, right? And it's the norm for us. So what's it going to take? It takes somebody who's willing to start using BIM and integrate some MEPs. And when that person finds that advantage and starts using that advantage, they're going to drag everyone else who happens to be losing with them. So I think it can move that direction. I think that it's hard to get people who are comfortable making money doing what they do to innovate. They're settled in. And the outliers, the people who want to gain market share, are the ones who are most likely to be willing to do something new and unique, different. So it's when people want to scoop up that market share that they're willing to do that. The modular offsite discussion is opening the eyes of a lot of people who are doing wall panels. And I think it's not too far off to see that stuff start to get integrated into the systems that exist. Like I said, the sort of component industry is this huge industry with these huge resources, and it's a proven industry. And so can we take that existing thing and start moving it a little bit more in that direction? I think it's certainly possible.
So that brings up another question, Chris. Are you getting constantly asked by these, call it the panel manufacturers, the components industry, like, hey, Chris, you've solved the labor part. We've solved the material part. Let's merge, or let's partner, or let's joint venture. Are you getting asked? Are you getting a lot more of those phone calls now?
The biggest, I go to quarterly meetings for the association. It's 2 days, and at least 5 or 6 times somebody wants to talk to me about how to sell to framers or how to engage framers more. And so I think they see that engaging people like me, my vendor who builds my walls for me has had a lot of success. They're the biggest wall manufacturer in Wisconsin. I'm their biggest customer now. And so I think they see that the framer as a key, engaging the framer as a key to their success, to doing it right. And that's been a change over the last 15 years where, and there's still animosity between some component manufacturers and framing contractors, where the framer will accuse the CM of messing up and vice versa. But I think the philosophy's very much changed. I was just at BCMC, Building Component Manufacturers Conference, 2 weeks ago, and 2 of the most successful component manufacturers in the country were up on stage, and they were talking about the key to their success was thinking like the framer. So that's the engagement I get from those guys. And again, remember, thinking like the framer is thinking like you need to understand all the other trades to do it successfully, right? And that can lead or segue well into integrated MEPs someday.
Well stated, my friend. Well, hey, without blowing smoke up your ass and your backside, I just, I love hearing success stories of someone like yourself, and I know you fall on the sword in a very humble state, but to come as a framer and do what you've done, it's a testament, and I think a lot of people in the audience appreciate that, because we attract anybody from the AEC industry, plus a lot of capital and technologically advanced people. It's just encouraging to hear, because we all see that more and more these days entrepreneurship is thriving, capitalism is thriving. It's good to see, and you being able to share your story gives other people conviction and hope, like, hey, I've got a dream, I've got a passion. And I think you stated it perfectly. It's like, I show up when I say I'm going to, I do it for the price I'm going to, and imagine that. Then next, right? You do it right, and then you move on. So, well, it's good to see there's still some Midwestern nice out of you. So I appreciate you coming on today. And then audience, for your sake, look up Chris. He's done a number of other podcasts. He's been well featured, especially in the Midwest. And I hope to see Chris and his partner do some more innovative things moving forward. So thanks for coming on today, my friend.
Thanks, JJ. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to the Mac and Blue Show, brought to you by Blue Wave General Contracting. Be sure to subscribe to the Mac and Blue podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Follow JJ Levinsky on LinkedIn and Instagram. Tune in every Monday